Happy to be here again. Want to say, first of all, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Get your phones ready. 813 It's going to be a light conversation, I hope. I know the past couple weeks we've had some pretty heavy conversations, and you know, uh, uh, life is heavy. That's the real deal, man. It's heavy out here, and sometimes we have to have those heavy conversations. But today, wanted to lighten up just a little bit. Gonna still stay tight, but we're gonna lighten up a little bit. Uh, yeah, they should call the Life Malcolm show, not the Life Malcolm phone. At this point in time, yeah. So 813-444-9588. We wanna talk a little bit today just about some personal stuff. But before we jump into that, I want to say, double back to how happy I am that you listen each week that you do. A lot of people called last week, emailed and responded to the show last week. I'm glad that people listened. I'm glad that the show was helpful. I want to say that I'm grateful for the platform. In Touch News has been hospitable. Allows me to be me, even with all my uhs and the rest of it. But getting better at this whole radio thing. I hope podcasting. I hope we're getting better. I hope you see the improvement. But it's important to say, express deep and profound appreciation to Tammy and Daryl Johnson and the whole In Touch News staff and family who make this thing happen. Oftentimes, I mentioned last week DJ A&A. She's often off camera, but she's always on the scene, man, making things happen. And I'm really grateful for that. So grateful for the entire production, the entire promotion, the entire team. And no, nobody asked me to say these things. It's just on my mind and on my heart, as the old people would say, to express this deep and profound appreciation and gratitude that I have for this platform, being able to say important stuff, share important things with the community, and with you. So yeah, so I want to make that my habit. We're gonna begin the show by bringing attention to the In Touch News team, staff, producers, owners, and expressing deep and profound appreciation for this opportunity. So get used to that. Another thing that we're gonna do is try to send out at the beginning of the week, which is like Monday, since the show is on Tuesday. We're gonna at the top of the week though, we're gonna get out to you what our topics of discussion would be about. So if you have some questions, concerns, etc., and you wanna jump right in to the discussion, you ain't gotta wait for me to start talking. You can just go ahead and prepare yourself for the discussion and call right in as soon as the show kicks off. You can call right in at 813-444-9588. And if I did not say it already, I should say, my name is Life Malcolm. I am the director of the Black People's Advancement and Defense Organization and the Barrel of the Gun. I want you to tune in, stay tuned in, call in. But today, I promised y'all a poem. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to keep that promise. I couldn't find my book. I used to have like books that I sold to people, and they would actually buy them. And books of poems. You might know that I used to do poetry for a living. One of Tampa's only full-time spoken word artists ever, and I'm certain that I was the first full-time spoken word artist in Tampa Bay. If it wasn't for the work that I did with spoken word early on in the early 2000s, 2001 is when I kind of like really broke on to the scene. 2001, 2002. I'm sure that the spoken word scene would be a lot different in Tampa Bay. Tampa at one point in time was known as a hub for spoken word and poetry. A lot of people used to want to come through here and share their work with Tampa Bay. And so I'm glad that we were able to contribute in that way. But at some point in time, it just became important to move on. Young people began to emerge on the poetry scene, and my old ass had to get out the way so that they could have plenty of room to do all the damage that they wanted to do. And so I stepped aside, and in stepping aside, I also put the poems and stuff behind me, and so I don't. I used to perform poems all the time, and like off the top of my head, I could do an hour set, right? But now, I don't remember one poem. I really don't, and I'm struggling right now. You might see me struggle. You might see me struggle. I'm struggling in front of your face right now, looking for this poem that I promised people, because I know I'm hear it. Like you promised us a poem, and you didn't deliver. So I'm looking. I'm searching. However, I can tell you what the poem is going to be about, because I can tell you it's time to tell you by now what the show is going to be about. Can you hear that feedback? No, it's in me. It's my ears. My hearing aid. Okay, I know. I got new hearing aids, and so just trying to get it together with the headset. This is working class radio, right? Only because, like the disclaimer said at the beginning, whatever's going on up in here does not reflect unless it's good. If it's good, it reflects on In Touch News. If you don't like it, it's on me. Holla at me. It's all me, I promise. So, we just doing this thing the best we can. I ain't pretending like I'm no professional at this. I got 2 months in. We're gonna be good. We're gonna be smooth before you know it. But I appreciate you watching and growing through this process with me. But tonight we're going to talk about grandmothers, particularly my own grandmother. My grandmother was born January 23rd, 1914. She would have been 107 had she still been alive, but she died nearly 14 years ago at the age of 93. My grandmother was a really, really wonderful woman. My grandmother and my mother raised me. My father split when I was about 3 months old. And, my father split when I was about 3 months old. And you say the picture's coming up? Oh, no. There, look at what, see? And you might recognize, so there's a beautiful woman in the picture. And there's this quite handsome fella in the picture as well. And I can tell you he looks nothing like that today, as you can see. But yeah, that's me. And my grandmother, whom I loved and still do love dearly. My grandmother raised me. My pop split when I was about 3 months old. And so it was my mother and my grandmother right there in the house where my mother still resides today. My grandmother was everything to me. I used to be afraid of the dark as a little boy, and my grandmother would allow me to come into her room and sleep next to her. And, when I woke up in the middle of the night, troubled, I didn't know why I was afraid of the dark. Maybe it had something to do with the Ku Klux Klan and stuff I'd read about the awful things they used to do to African people at night. And so, I didn't have a boogeyman in mind. I had a colonizer in mind, and I'm sure that must have kept me troubled. But my grandmother would allow me to come into the room and sleep next to her. And my mother, at some point in time, I was probably like 8 or 9 years old still doing this. And my mother, she ain't like that, and told my grandmother that I could not, don't have me in the room no more. I had to learn how to, deal with the dark. And but grandmother she loved me so much that my mother worked nights, I should say that. And so my grandmother and I spent a lot of time together because my mother worked at night and slept during the day so she could go back to work at night. And so my mother would come in at like 7:30 in the morning from work, but my grandmother would get me up about 6:30, wake me up out of bed about 6:30, put me back in my bed. And my mother was never the wiser to the fact that my grandmother still sheltered me from my early fears as a little boy. My grandmother was like I said, she was born in 1914, so she's an old person, not a very well educated person. As a matter of fact, I believe she got her high school diploma or something equivalent to that right around the time I was born, either like right in '75 when I was born, or shortly before or thereafter. And I think she got it right after her retirement or something like that. But anyway, like just but not a real like really well educated person, but a wise person and a smart person. And my grandmother and I would spend. So of course during school time, I was in school during the day, so we didn't have much daytime together then. So my grandmother would wake me up in the morning, like not just to get back in my own bed, but to also prepare breakfast for me every morning. My grandmother would cook breakfast, hot breakfast. I didn't go to school unless I wanted to, and I had to beg sometimes to go to school with cereal, just having eaten cereal. And my favorite cereal back then was Cocoa Puffs. I was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And my grandmother would buy my favorite cereal, and sometimes I could eat it before school. But most days, my grandmother cooked grits and eggs, or and toast and bacon and sausage, or oatmeal, and with the evaporated milk and the sugar. And we had 6 ounces of orange juice. We could only have 6 ounces of orange juice. We couldn't have more than that. We poor working class people. We had a half gallon that had to last us all week long. So we had little orange or yellow 6 ounce cups of orange juice. And my grandmother did that every morning from kindergarten to high school graduation. She did that for me, and make sure I was well fed for school. And my mother would take me to school, drop me off, and then pick me up in the afternoon from school. My grandmother was in the kitchen cooking. Grandma could cook. I don't know where she got her culinary skills from, but that woman could cook. And so, I mean, we had everything that you could imagine, even stuff that ordinarily you wouldn't like liver and cow tongue. I'm gonna tell you how good it was. It was so good. I did not know until I was an adult that I was actually eating animals. Like I didn't know, because my mother took care of me so well. I never had to prepare a piece of meat or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I'm 46 years old, and I've not ever like cooked a chicken. I've never cooked a chicken. I cooked chicken patties, but never cooked a chicken, and never really cooked ribs or anything like that. Like on grilling children and community building nights, I've gotten pretty good at putting a steak on the grill and making that happen. But my mother fed me, and my grandmother made the stuff so good. So like, I'd see it on my plate, and I'd say, "What is that?" And it would say, "It's cow tongue." And I just thought that's what it was called. I had no idea, because I never saw it raw. I never saw it raw, like in the package, until I was well grown and beyond eating that foolishness. And I saw it in the store one day, and it said cow tongue, and it looked just like a tongue, and I was like, ooh. But my grandmother could prepare it in a way that it was so succulent and delicious. I mean, I probably wouldn't have cared if I knew it was a tongue. That's the kind of love with which she prepared the stuff, and liver, and my favorite pork chops. And then she would fix the little chicken, and sometimes the chicken would have the little ass part on it. I don't know what it is about chicken butt, but it's crispy and crunchy and greasy, and I used to love, give me the butt piece. And so yeah, my grandmother would do that for me. And man, great northern beans, chili with cornbread. Sunday dinners were always special. My grandmother did that. So every day, my mother would bring me home from school, and and she would, of course, be in the process of preparing herself to go to work. So my mother would eat with us, but then shortly after, she would have to get in bed. And I'm going to continue the story. Talk about my grandmother right now. We're going to continue rapping about this wonderful old lady. Just a few ticks, all right? So stay with us. Call. If you want to talk about your grandmother, you can call in and talk about it. I would love to hear about her. 813-444-9588. This is the Life Malcolm Show, and we'll be right back.
Politics? Tampa Bay Politics is on every Wednesday at 11 a.m. with Angela Birdsong. Tune in right here on In Touch Radio.
It may be hard to believe, but people just like you are already saving money. FeedThePig.org makes it easy. Their simple savings plan teaches you how to start saving without going overboard, so you don't need to start foraging wild berries.
I was skeptical, but these are actually pretty good.
You don't need to sell your soul to the devil.
$15 is the best I can do.
You just need feedthepig.org. Don't get left behind. Get tips and tools at feedthepig.org. Brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Welcome to Calvin's Barbershop.
You all got to see this.
I don't even want to know what you're looking at on that phone.
Well, you should. I was learning about the dangers of high blood pressure and that we need to get ours checked regularly. High blood pressure can increase the risk of heart attack or stroke, but this text program can help keep it at a healthy range. Just text Barbershop to 97779 to sign up.
I'll get right on it as soon as I'm done with this baby panda video.
Text Barbershop to 97779. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
Who doesn't love being number one? When your team's dominating the standings, or your favorite band rocks the charts at number one, it feels good, right? Kind of like how it feels when you have auto insurance with State Farm. Because making you feel like number one is an honor your local State Farm agent takes seriously. Through the good times and not so good, your State Farm agent's proud to be here to help life go right.
Call Herman White at 961-6661. That's 961-6661.
For us to talk again. And today, I'm talking about something I like talking about even more than the state. Talking about my grandmother. She raised me, man. My grandmother was incredible. She, as I left off, I should say, welcome back to the Life Malcolm Show on In Touch News, where everybody is a star. And you're a bigger star if you call in. And like you get a big star. You call in, we going to treat you real nice and give you opportunity to talk about your grandmother, talk about anybody you want to talk about. We want to hear from you. But yeah, so my grandmother raised me. I was talking about how when my mother would bring me home from school and my grandmother was in the kitchen, dinner was 5 o'clock every day, on time, 5 o'clock. If you grew up at 2904, you knew that you had to be at the dinner table at 5 o'clock. No ifs, no ands, no buts about it. That was the deal. And so we'd eat, and then after that, right, my mother doing her thing so she can go to bed, get some rest, in bed by 8 o'clock, and it was just me and grandma. Man, and so my weeknights were spent just either right next to my grandmother's big chair. My grandmother used to sit in a big chair that sits in the middle of the living room. There's still a big chair that sits in the middle of the living room, and most times if my siblings and other family members are respectful enough, they keep their ass out my chair, and I sit there where my grandmother used to sit, and I would sit beside her and watch TV with my grandmother. My grandmother loved to watch TV, and she loved to read the Sentinel and this rag that used to pass itself off as a paper called the Tampa Tribune. And so my grandmother had this thing where she would read the Sentinel in the daytime, especially on Fridays, and she would read it from the back. She would start at the back, and I didn't realize, I always found that puzzling, that my grandmother would start reading the paper from the back, the Sentinel from the back, but that's where all the dead people are. And so my grandmother was old at that time, in 75, she was, 60, 61 or something like that, right? So, so a lot of her friends were moving on. And so I guess she'd run right to the back to see who she might recognize as having transitioned. And so she would do that. I remember her reading the paper, the Tampa Tribune thing, and we would, she would pass the funnies on to me. I remember she used to particularly like something Bailey, the Bailey guy. He was, I think, he was like a soldier or something. She used to like him. Can't remember, but she really used to like Snuffy Smith, like that. And I know why, because Snuffy Smith and my grandmother kind of talked alike. They said some of the darnest things. But so I know I'm jumping around, but man, so much to say about this woman. So I would watch TV with my grandmother, and like one of the shows we would watch on Fridays. I still remember the Friday night lineup from like 1980. It was the Dukes of Hazzard. Then it was the Incredible Hulk. So from 8 until 8:30, it was the Dukes of Hazzard. From 8:30 to 9, it was the Incredible Hulk, the one with Lou Ferrigno, and then after the Incredible Hulk on Friday nights, it was Dallas. and my bedtime was 10 o'clock, so on Fridays, and so I could stay up and watch Dallas, and so I would watch Dallas with my grandmother, and man, so we're talking in the 80s. Dallas, what came out like 70, 78, 79, something like. So we're still when it was early on. Man, I know all them people. Like we grew up together. Me, Larry Hagman, Charlene Tilton. Boy, that's like I don't. Ooh, Charlene, I think her name Tifton, something like that. The one that played Lucy. Oh man, Lucy, and they gave her the right name, Lucy. I don't know why that she was. Anyway, so yeah, you had Patrick Duffy, and he played Bobby, and you had Victoria Prince. Like, I mean, all these people, and I had no business watching this stuff because they were doing some of the most salacious, lecherous, conniving, Machiavellian stuff you can imagine. And I know that because I recently rewatched the whole thing, like from the first episode till the very, very silly end. And I was like, I'll be doggone. Because, like, now I understand what old JR was doing. All them trips he was making at night to other people's house other than South Fork when he would come in a little late. I just in my little 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old mind, it was JR was just out late. But now I know why he was out late. It just all made sense. And I couldn't so the things that I would watch with my grandmother, I learned a lot. Didn't know I was learning stuff. Got a call. So we're gonna take that call. Caller, come in.
Hello, good evening, good evening.
What's going on?
I hear you talk. This is Linda from Detroit.
What's going on, cousin?
I had to call in this time when I heard you talk about grandmother and the big in the living room.
Yeah. I talked about y'all's ass sitting in my chair. Yes, I did. I said siblings and other family members, so I did bring you up. Yes, I did. Go ahead. I cut you off. Go ahead. I'm gonna let you have the floor. Like you. I let you have my chair. I'm gonna let you have the floor. Go ahead, cousin.
It's so good just to hear you during this month of January, giving so much honor to such the head of our amazing family, and just to know that she demonstrated so much strength. She taught us what it meant to go to work every day. She taught us that you go to work. She worked those days. I listened to Mama talk about, how when they were growing up, that she taught them how the importance of paying your house note, paying your bills on time, that no matter what she did or how tired she was, on Fridays, she would stop at the rental office to make sure that their house rent was paid, so at least they know they didn't have to ever worry about being put outside or anything like that. And it's just so amazing when you have that to be, to see and to pattern after later on in life, to know, okay, hey, no matter what life brings us and shows us out here, we can still toughen it up. And it was so funny just to hear you talk about about her getting the paper and reading it from the back, because it's so amazing. I do that now, and it's so funny. And I guess I must have watched Grandma do that so many times during the summer when we were there every summer that I picked that up, because it's like you looking to see, well, do I know anybody here that somebody didn't tell me about that passed,
Yeah. I find myself, not only reading the paper from the back, but doing other things from the back, and I blame that on Grandma too.
You are so out of order.
I know. But, I can't talk about the mayor this week. I got to do something. I'm messing around. Look here, cousin. You know how silly we can get. So why don't you let me have my floor back. And
go ahead.
I'm so happy to hear your voice. It makes my heart so happy to hear from you. I'm glad you're listening. We'll talk in the future. All right. To be continued.
All right. Love you.
Peace. And so so that was like one of my oldest cousins. So she knew grandmother before I did, but I like to brag about this fact. I am the only grandchild that my grandmother raised from cradle to college. The only one, and I'm the last child that my grandmother raised from birth to baccalaureate. I think I might have made it baccalaureate, but anyway, like, and I love that. Like, I was like my grandmother's last child, and so like I was saying, man, my grandmother had me watching all these things, not just Dallas. That was nighttime, so I couldn't watch. The one that came on after it was Falcon Crest. That came on at 10 o'clock on Friday night. I promise I remember that program, and but I never could watch it because my bedtime was at 10 o'clock, so I often missed that. Sometimes, though, I was able to stay up past 10 o'clock on Sundays, and my grandmother and I would watch Trapper John together, Trapper John MD. And but during the daytime when there was no school, and I stayed in Tampa because, let me tell you another thing about my grandmother. So one of the things, like I said, Dallas, right? So one of the things I started doing as a very young child is flying. I took my first plane trip when I was 11 months old from Tampa to Detroit, Michigan, which is where Linda is. She was up there visiting her and others, and what was that sound? My daughter's asking me what was that sound. Daughter, it might be my hearing aid. So yeah, but we working with it. We doing what we got to do over here. I appreciate you tuning in. That's my baby, calling Yayeezy. Shout out to Yayeezy. We're gonna have her on the program soon. Come in and kick it. But my grandmother, so at 5 years old, I took my first plane trip by myself at 5 years old from Tampa to LAX. When I say by myself, of course, I went on the plane by myself, but I'm saying, I didn't have any adults that I knew accompanying me. They had some, it was a flight attendant. She didn't look like Lucy, but, I guess it's the best Continental Airlines had at the time. But so they put me with that, and I was able to, travel that way. But before I took my first plane trip to California by myself, my grandmother and I flew out to San Diego to see her second oldest son, who lived there at that time, my Uncle Ernest. I love him so much, man. Me and Uncle Ernest so cool, so chill. 83, 84 years old, but so chill, man. He was at my bachelor party. I mean, kicking it like Unc super cool. So we went out there to kick it with him. I'm 5 years old. We had this layover in Dallas. Guess what I asked my grandma? Hey, Grandma, can we go see JR? Because, because JR was that deal to me by the time I was 5 years old. JR was that deal, you understand? And so a layover, let's go. In Dallas, let's go see JR. And my grandmother thought that was funny and cute. And needless to say, we didn't see JR. But that was a moment. Oh, but back to my grandmother. So daytime. So not only did my grandmother expose me to these very saucy nighttime soaps, my grandmother had me watching the daytime soaps. You understand me? When there wasn't no school during the summer, oh, man, I could tell you the lineup. My grandmother only liked CBS soaps. I could tell you the line up. At 1 o'clock, we had The Young and the Restless. At 2 o'clock, we had As the World Turns. And at 3 o'clock, we had The Guiding Light. Doggone right. Neil Long, boy, woo. Before I knew everything that they were talking about, I knew it was something special about Neil. I knew she had a bright future in front of her. She was a very fine actress. I had much appreciation for her skills at that time, very young age. And so, she played Hamp's daughter in The Guiding Light. I'm telling you, I know these soap operas. Jack Abbott, John Abbott. You understand me? And on As the World Turns, my grandma said, "Ooh, she used to hate old John Steinbeck. She used to hate that guy." But I mean, my grandmother and I would sit there for hours and watch these shows, and that was like in the summer, but in the afternoons. But my grandmother also had this affinity for old TV shows like westerns, like black and white joints. So we were watching the Andy Griffith Show, My Favorite Martian, That's My Mama. You understand? Like all these things in black and white, Bonanza. Lil Joe Lauren Green. As a matter of fact, the guy who played the oldest son in Bonanza also played the title character in Trapper John MD. I can't remember the guy's name, but it was Lil Joe House. I think dude's name might have been Aaron or something like that. And the oldest brother, and he played Trapper John MD. And man, my grandmother had me so into these TV shows. I mean, they were like, I was the only child. I grew up as an only child. My mother's only child, the one and only. And there will never be another. from that way. And so, yeah, so I was by myself all the time, just me and grandmother, but I had all of these TV characters as friends. And we're going to talk a little bit more about my grandmother, my friends, and then we're going to jump into a word from the word. But you got to wait on that. We'll be right back. This is the Life Malcolm Show. InTouchNews.com.
Welcome to Calvin's Barbershop.
You all gotta see this.
I don't even want to know what you're looking at on that phone.
Well, you should. I was learning about the dangers of high blood pressure and that we need to get ours checked regularly. High blood pressure can increase the risk of heart attack or stroke, but this text program can help keep it at a healthy range. Just text Barbershop to 97779 to sign up.
I'll get right on it as soon as I'm done with this baby panda video.
Text Barbershop to 97779. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
It's important to plan ahead for emergencies, like the storm. When it kicked in, we had a plan. We were able to get in touch with each other in no time.
How to find each other.
The whole experience was fine.
The most frightening 10 hours of my life.
If there's one piece of advice I'd offer other moms out there, it's to stay calm and keep to the plan.
Some parents plan ahead, some don't. Make sure you know where to find your family in an emergency. Start your plan at ready.gov. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Hey, this is Agent Wright, better known as Mr. Clean. You looking for some great barbecue? Come see them two brothers on the grill, located at 423 Virginia Street, Charleston, West Virginia. We got ribs, chicken, pulled pork, brisket, collard greens, mac and cheese, baby. Come get some and get you a nice, smooth cigar. 304-550-4431. That is 304-550-4431. Come get some, baby. The Rib Man, mama, the Rib Man.
All right. Welcome back to the Life Malcolm Show right here at In Touch News, where everybody is a star. And you, future caller, are the biggest star. Call in, 813-444-9588. I mean, I know you got a grandmother that you want to talk about. Yeah, you can call in and talk about somebody else's grandmama if you want to. But I'm going to talk about mine right now, man. Daytime, mornings, we had Heath on, what was that show that, the guy who played the $1 Million Man also played Heath on Big Valley. Oh, my grandma's like, oh, man, when I tell you that I'm sitting around here 5, 6, 7 years old, with this old lady in her 60s and then almost in her 70s sitting around here watching these TVs. Oh, man, Perry Mason, when Perry Mason was in black and white. I watched Perry Mason go from black and white to color. My grandmother had me tied up in that stuff. So I knew as a young person, I knew stuff that most young people didn't know. Didn't have no business knowing either. And my grandmother used to make watching television exciting because she would talk to the people on the TV. Now, you got to imagine, my grandmother was born before, but certainly she hadn't seen the TV and growing up, I'm going to say she was born before TV. I'm not sure when television came out, but she certainly didn't see one. And so now she's got this picture box, right, with people in there moving. And my grandmother, I'm not sure if she really thought the people could hear her when she talked to them, but she talked to them just like they could hear her. She's like, JR, they behind the door. Don't go in there, JR. And so I remember her excitement watching these programs, and I still find myself kind of doing that same. I'm guilty. Don't. Why you gonna do that? How stupid, talking to the people on TV like they can hear me, man. My grandmother raised me. I remember when it got time for me to. As I approached manhood, I started feeling myself, getting muscles and stuff like that. I was like 11 years old and, on the verge of becoming a man. And my grandmother, again, another new kind of relatively new invention for her, this telephone thing. My grandma, it was funny, man, just being around these old people who just seeing these things for the first time, like telephone and freezers and refrigerators, because like my grandmother grew up with ice boxes, where you, like the box was like a cooler, and you had the ice man who would come and bring the block of ice, and put it in the ice box, and that's how you kept your food cold, the dry ice, as long as. So this refrigerator thing, like I remember, we had two of them too. I don't know why. We still do have two refrigerators over there, but you couldn't, if you open the refrigerator. Once you got old enough, you were allowed to open the refrigerator. You had, if you opened it, you had to be sure you got everything out you wanted right then, because you had to wait a whole like 2 minutes before you opened it again. So you couldn't open it and close it and say, because in my grandmother's mind, my mother's too, I believe, or maybe she just went along with my grandmother, I don't know. But it was something about the rubber. You were gonna tear up the rubber around the refrigerator if it closed and you open it right back. So you couldn't do that. And so, boy, man, you know how long 2 minutes is when you waiting for Kool-Aid. You know, you got everything. You done got the salad dressing, and now you got to wait for the Kool-Aid for 2 minutes because you just opened and forgot. Man, it's like 2 minutes seems forever, right? So, that kind of thing. We couldn't touch the TV. That was the TV, y'all. Some of y'all might remember where the TV had the little knob. You had to turn, click, click, click. We couldn't, like, back then we only had a few channels. What we had, Channel 3, Channel 8, Channel 10, Channel 13, and then that was on VHF. Then if you went to UHF, you had Channel 22 if you wanted to listen to that preacher, some old bootlicking preacher, some Price, something like that, I think his name was. You could listen to him on Channel 22. Then you had Channel 28, that kind of came out later. You could see Twilight Zone on that joint. Then you had Channel 44, and we used to watch Channel 44 on Saturdays. That was Creature Feature and Kung Fu with David Carradine, the dude that was doing something freaky to himself in the closet and died. You remember David Carradine? Yeah, we used to watch this guy on Saturdays. And so, but here's the thing. If so you got Channel 3. Say if you want to go from Channel 3 to, for example, Channel 13, you couldn't just go and get it there. No. Yes. Oh, yeah, you had to go click, click, click. You had to turn one at a time. No, because you're going to break the knob. And then, you had to go click, 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 missing half the show, right? But, that was, my grandmother raised me, man. And so finally, before remote controls came around, I was the remote control, but that was like an honor and a privilege. I got to touch the TV, and so we would do that. And, but this telephone thing was a serious issue. I love my grandmother, man, but, there was some, I guess, if you will, downsides about growing up with old people, this telephone thing, like old people retired. And they don't have nothing to do but talk to each other, and so that's what they would do. And so that meant that now that I am the mature age of 11 years old and kind of cute, handsome, or if you will, the girls wanted to call me, and I wanted to talk to them, but I couldn't. My grandmother would get furious about me because every time the phone rang, right, she used to the phone, the person calling for her. But now they calling for me. Oh, man, our grandmother did not like that. You understand? So I had to get my own phone line. And so I was 11 years old when I got my own phone line. It was really special to me to have my own phone. But my grandmother raised me. And so she used to do this mission thing they had at church, like called a mission meeting. And she was part of the mission board. I'm going to tell you about this mission board, another downside. Grandma. I mean, all good, but downside. Mission board. They met. It was just a bunch of old, beautiful, old African women who believed in the Bible, who loved the Lord, etc. And so they would meet at each other's houses, different members' house each week. Man, I hated it when it came to our house because you had to be quiet. You couldn't make no noise. And when you 12, 13, 14, something like that, before I started driving, because as a matter of fact, once I could catch the bus by myself, I was out on mission, certainly on mission meeting. When it happened on Wednesdays, I remember like yesterday, Miss Cumbers, Miss Hudson, Miss Drusilla Gordon, Sister Annie Butts. I remember, man, they used to come to the house. And the thing I liked about it was all the old people always had candy and $1 for the young king. You know what I mean? So that kind of, I had to wait to the end of the mission meeting, but all of them was going to give me $1 and a peppermint. And so, so I like that part of it, but man, I had to be quiet. the whole time, that they in there doing whatever they doing. I don't know what mission they was on, but whatever the mission was, we had to be quiet while they did it. And I remember that, man. My grandmother, my grandmother raised me, and so when I got up to driving age, started liking girls, and that I could bring around. My grandmother would offer her approval or disapproval of my selections. And I tell you now, man, I wish I had listened to my grandmother a lot more than I did. She could have saved me a lot of heartache and a lot of trouble. The thing about being raised by my grandmother and my mother that kind of put me at a disadvantage is that they were just incredible women, and I did not know. I lived most of my life not knowing that some women could be scandalous and all kinds of other things that I cannot say on this program, but I promise you, you know what those words are, because you know some women like that. And so, but I didn't know they existed. I was blindsided when I ran into them, because I thought all the women in the world were nice, wholesome, honest, faithful, all this. Man, I believed it because my grandmother and my mother raised me. And so, anyway, I got up to be some age, no dating, whatever. All right, so everybody want my attention today while we're doing the Life Malcolm show, but we're going to put them on pause and get back to talking about my grandmother. My grandmother raised me. And so I started liking girls. Is it still going off? Oh, look, man. Okay. But it's coming from here somewhere. It's my computer. There's somebody trying to get me on Skype. I thought I muted it. Oh, it might be coming out my headset. I don't know. Listen, don't worry about it. It won't last long. Tarry with me just a little while longer. But yeah, my grandmother would make sure that I had my guard up as best she could when it came to these women. And I remember my grandmother one time I was getting ready for I think it was homecoming or prom. And man, I was sharp, man. Then got me a rental car and all that. And much like I guess I was probably around the age you saw me in that picture. And my grandmother was so happy that I was I guess she liked my choice, and I was dressed up in my suit, and she gave me the biggest hug and biggest kiss, and just made me feel. Like I had reached that point now where, I could, do some of the stuff I saw JR do, and so fly young man fly, and it's kind of like a rite of passage thing. But I remember her allowing me to get old, to be grown, to turn the TV whenever I wanted to, and open the refrigerator at my discretion, and what have you. And in 2000, DJ, do we have the poem ready? I bet. So look, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna talk this talk, and then when we come back from break, we're gonna play the poem. I thought I was gonna read it to you, but I actually recorded it many years ago, and I wanted to start the program with the poem for context, but. So it might be a little anticlimactic at this juncture. Nevertheless, I promised you a poem, and you shall get a poem. So we're gonna go ahead and run the break right now, because I want to do a word from the word, a little bit of that when we get back. But right now, go ahead and stay tuned for the poem, a word from the word. That's coming up next on the Life Malcolm Show. Right after this.
So believe we 100 down 813-248-6300. Everything gon' be okay. Call Ricky, he coming. He take the kids to the floor to grab a pin of sundown. 184-361 Rick. That's 184-361-425. Never word from the point forward, just recline. Ricky, push your boy statewide. Just in case you missed it, I'ma tell you one more time. 1-800-361 Rick. Call Ricky, ask Ricky, is a legal medical referral service. The doctors and lawyers on our network are trained in handling auto injury claims and giving you the best medical treatment and recovery. Dial 1-844-361 Rick. That's 1-844-361-7425. Ricky, Ricky. Ask Ricky.
All right. So listen, we're gonna go right into the poem, and then I'm gonna go ahead and finish talking about my grandmother who raised me. Take it away, DJ.
Most of us at some point in our lives have somebody that means more to us than anybody else has ever meant before or will ever mean again. Sometimes it's a long-legged lady if you're a man, or some tall, very smooth man if you're a woman. And in some odd cases, they get kind of crossed up. We won't talk about those. Since I consider myself somebody who writes primarily, out of all the things that I might have written, my favorite thing that I've written has to be about this favorite old lady of mine.
My grandmother was a strong one. In 2000, the doctors said she was done. Told my mother to call the family and tell us to come on so we can be by her bedside when she died. As soon as I got the phone call, I left work just like that. Doing 100 on the Howard Franklin, thinking back to when I was afraid of the dark, and I would awaken this matriarch with late night door knocks. She let me in to sleep next to her even though my mother told her not to. I guess she loved me so much she had to. I'm sure that she loved me so much she was glad to. Wake up at 5:30 every morning from my first day at kindergarten until the day that I graduated from the 12th grade to make sure that I had a hot meal before school. And I can still smell the food. I can still hear her in the kitchen humming them hymns that let me know my grits was coming. I can still hear her talking to her favorite characters on them TV shows. Still see her wiggling her toes day and night. And the difference between these images and the vision of her lying there bedridden and helpless is like the difference between day and night. Watching it was hard. Watching my mother struggle with my grandmother was even harder. For 7 years to keep grandmother comfortable, every 2 hours my mother would be feeding her, flipping her, and turning her, coming up with homemade remedies to make sure grandmother's bed sores stopped burning her, no matter what was ailing or hurting her. But in 2007 it ended. Grandmother had given all she had to give and decided it was finished. And although I miss her every minute, her death is alright with me. And while I'm no longer afraid of the dark, I will always remember her as the spark that taught me it's quite alright to be. Her as the spark that taught me it's quite alright to be.
For the poet in the poem. Appreciate, especially I do not own the rights to the basis of the derivative work, Grandma's Hands by, of course, Bill Withers, and the version that you heard with the harmony was performed by Take Six. So definitely want to give them shout outs and credit for that. But I wrote that poem, man. My grandmother raised me, and in 2000 we got the word that she was in bad shape, thought she was going to die. And that was rough, man. Seeing my grandmother bedridden. Some of you know my story about having to bury my son, my firstborn child. And my grandmother had to bury her firstborn child, my Uncle Junior boy. We're going to talk about him one day, too. Uncle Junior, that was my dude. I got some stories about that guy for real, right? And so I remember cancer ate him up, took his throat and all that stuff. And he loved them cigarettes. So my grandmother, though, expressed to me that just took something out of her. And so my uncle died in September 1997. By early 2000, my grandmother was bedridden. I will always believe that she just gave up. It was just too much. And so one day she decided she wasn't going to get out of bed no more, and she never did. I remember when my mother called me. I was leaving the double-decker. This was March 3rd, going into the 4th. I was leaving the double-decker, coming over the bridge, and my my mother called me and said, well, mom's gone. I told her, okay, I'll be right there. And got to the house, and my grandmother was dead. Still warm, though. And I stayed there until the people came to get her. That's my first time ever experiencing this wait where the people, the coroner, the coroner comes to get the body. I never had to go through that. My grandmother was the first time, and I sat there just holding her hand, rubbing her face, and she just turned cold and stiff, and reality just set in, in such a way, even though she hadn't spoken for years, hadn't moved for just that long. And sometimes, to be honest, seeing her that way, I used to wish that she would just die, because I hated seeing her that way. But when she did die, it was like, I wish she had not died. But she did, and I had to go do a show. It was already scheduled, so I as soon as the coroners left, I left and jumped on a plane, went did some show. I think I was in the Midwest, and it was gone for the entire week. It was one of the things that I regret. Man, I left my mother, and should not have. I should have been there, but I came back home and got ready. There for the funeral. I went to the funeral home and spent some time with the body, and then went through the funeral process, and then it was time to bury my grandmother. And I was at the funeral home. They had a bunch of open graves, and they had these tractors, and these people at the graveyard would just scoop up tractor loads of dirt and drive it over to the hole where the casket was, and just dump the dirt on the damn casket. I couldn't allow that to happen to my grandmother. So I told the people, I say, bring the dirt and bring the shovels. Put the dirt right here and bring me a shovel. And it started raining. But all I needed was a shovel and the dirt. And people were at the repast, but I stayed there and buried my grandmother. Every shovel of dirt on that lady I put there, because she deserved that. She couldn't have nobody come dump no dirt on my grandmother. My grandmother raised me, and that was the first time I did that. And that has since become something that I do for people whom I love dearly. Buried my friend Will the Real One Bell that same way, and of course Young Life buried him the same way. And I had help with those latter two, but that day, just me and my grandmother. My godparents stayed there to give me a ride to the repast, because I rode in that family car thing, and they left. But just me and a shovel and dirt and grandmama and memories. And man, my grandmother raised me. And so, as we get ready to move out of this program, y'all people don't call and talk to a brother. Nothing. I see y'all chatting on the joint though. I appreciate y'all chiming in that way. But I really would like to hear y'all call in and talk about. Adam. Yeah, Adam. That's right. I said Aaron, but yeah, it was Adam. Adam Hoss and Lil Joe. Thank you, Sakina Sabri. But one reason why this program is important is because venerating. I know I probably not even a verb. I make it a verb, but elevating our ancestors to esteem and honoring them and holding their names up and lifting them up is so critical, such a critical component to our existence as a people, as a nation. We got to do that. As a matter of fact, so this is a word from the word, and I'm gonna tell you, it's over there in Exodus. In the 10 Commandments, and you should know, you can find it in Exodus somewhere. I don't have the scripture right now, but I promise you it's in there. But there's a scripture that says something to the effect that you should honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. And growing up, old people, like I said, my grandmother raised me, old person, they apparently, older people thought that meant you had to say yes ma'am and no ma'am and yes sir and no sir, and be this really respectful kind of individual, and if not, then you might die. Oh, got a call. Okay, caller, come in. Hello, caller, come in.
Okay, I'm in.
Yeah, what do you have to say, caller? Please tell me who you are, where you're calling from, and say what you got to
Okay,
say.
I'm excuse me. I'm Malcolm's aunt, Alberta Jackson,
Oh.
Tampa, Florida.
Right on. What's going on, Auntie?
Hey, Charles, sweetheart, how are you?
I'm in the game. What's going on?
In the game. Well, I wanted to talk. I wanted to talk about my grandma.
Okay. You got about 2 minutes because I got to get back to the
about
word.
my grandmama's
Go ahead.
life.
Talk about it. Talk about it.
My grandmother was almost 112 years old when she passed away.
Grandma Jenny.
I remember Grandmama used to be in the rocking chair. And so she was in.
Auntie, you listening to yourself in the background. It might be what's throwing yourself off.
Yeah.
Turn yourself down and then.
And she was a sweet mama, grandmama, and when she was 100 years old, she used to be singing, and we would walk around her chair, and we would be singing happy birthday, and she was 100. She was 112 years old when she passed.
Yeah. I remember the stories about Grandma Jenny. All right, Auntie, look, I'm gonna jump off because I got 4 minutes and I want to bring home a word from the word. I appreciate you listening. I definitely appreciate you calling.
Okay.
Yeah, while I'm talking about your mama. Yep. All right.
Yes.
To be continued. So, yeah. We honor the fathers and the mothers that they may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Don't just mean just being yes ma'am, no ma'am, and obedient and what have you. It means to raise them up to. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, "Don't remove the old landmarks and leave the landmarks there, so that people would know that you were there and that days may be long." Like right now, we know who George Washington is, Abraham Lincoln, all these other despicable white people because. Other despicable white people have kept them alive and kept their names in front of our faces. Robert E. Lee and all this elementary school that Miss Schamberger was able to get renamed and all that stuff, man. Our colonizers have been brilliant and diligent about honoring their fathers and their mothers so that the days are long. I mean, Columbus been dead 600 years, but we know more about him than some of us know about our own grandmothers. And so that's why it's important that we honor our fathers and our mothers, even those who are our ancestors because they transitioned before we did, like my son, Young Life. That's one reason for grilling, chilling, and community building, because we're going to do that thing. We're going to make sure that people know that our ancestors and our fathers and our mothers lived, and that way we can ensure that our history, our mark on this earth, on this land, will not be would not be easily erased. It doesn't mean that if you just do what's right or what's respectful and obey and all that stuff that you're gonna live long. A lot of the good die young, and some people who should have been dead a long time ago still living, aka the bandits. Well, let me get back to the thing. So my grandmother raised me, and if there's anything good about me, I'm sure that my mother and my grandmother had something to do with it. If there's anything that you don't like about me, don't blame them. Blame me. You can reach me at 813-810-3582, and we can talk about it. Or you can call me at 813-444-9588 and talk about it with everybody on the Life Malcolm Show. Either works. The point is today that we got to make sure that we remember those who deserve, who merit honor, respect, and appreciation, etc. And in that vein, I'm gonna say, one time for Kobe Bryant and Gianna Bryant, who died tragically last year on today. I think it was the 26th. I know it was somewhere close like that. And we have to do that for ourselves. Our colonizers ain't gonna do it for us. We have to protect ourselves. We have to defend ourselves. We have to honor ourselves. We have to lift ourselves. And I know these things because my grandmother raised me. I'm looking forward to talking to you next week, man. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope that I said something that reminded you of someone whom you love as dearly as I love that old lady who raised me one time for Alberta Macon. Looking forward to the next time, grandmother, to be continued. And for you all listening, we'll talk soon. Thanks again to In Touch News, Tammy and Daryl, DJ ANA. My name is Life Malcolm, the director of the Black People's Advancement Defense Organization and the Barrel of the Gun. See you next week.